All right, welcome everyone. Please be aware that we are recording this session, as Zoom has just let you know. We have enabled the live transcript for closed captioning, and you may find that option on the control bar that usually appears at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I would like to extend the warmest welcome to you for the final event of our ASLE Contingent and Independent Scholar Online Speaker Series. Today's topic is getting funding and organizing a more secure future as a contingent scholar. I'm Kate Huber. I'm currently an assistant professor in the Department of Culture Studies at Tilburg University. Before this job, I worked as an independent scholar while teaching language arts in a rural public high school in Oregon, and I currently am a contingent scholar here in the Netherlands. From January 2023 to December 2025, I have the honor of serving in the ASLE Executive Council as the Contingent Independent Advocacy Officer. For those of you who are joining an ASLE event for the first time, a special welcome. We are so glad you've joined us today and invite you to help sustain and further our work by becoming an ASLE member, if you're not already part of the association. ASLE acknowledges its office is located on Endokina, the ancestral and unceded homeland of the Abenaki people along the Quanatech and Ashwelot watersheds, and in the shadow of Mount Monadnock. We recognize that this land has been cared for by the Abenaki for at least 12,600 years, including by the Sakoki, Pennacook, and other Wabanaki peoples. ASLE offers the statement as a way of affirming its commitment to recognizing and supporting Native history and culture in the Monadnock region and all regions where our members and officers dwell, past, present, and future. ASLE's leadership is hosting this series for the first time. It aims to elevate the work of independent and contingent scholars whose work exceeds the boundaries of the academy and fosters connections between the environmental humanities and new audiences. These connections are increasingly important as humanities programs face the budget cuts and contingency expands throughout higher education. We hope that these events will offer new insights and inspiration for where we can take our research and activism in the future, asking many of the independent and contingent scholars in our community to lead the way. So by way of logistical information, we will ask that you remain on mute, and we'll have time for questions later. And we'll ask that you put your questions in the chat. Please keep the questions concise since we only have brief minutes together. So our first speaker tonight is Mimi Winick. Mimi is a Paul Edwards Chair in Religion and the Arts at Virginia Commonwealth University. And her current book project is on late Victorian theorists of religion and their invention of a secret history of feminist spirituality. And it was supported by a 2023 ACLS project development grant. From 2016 to 2024, she worked off the tenure track at 3 different universities, including as a fellow in the Women's Studies in Religion program and on the Transcendence and Transformation Initiative at the Center for the Study of World Religions at Harvard Divinity School. So welcome, Mimi.
Thanks so much, Kate, and everyone. I am so delighted to be here. I am about to start sharing my screen for this presentation. Okay, without further ado, to talk about acquiring funding off the tenure track. Oops. The outline of this talk will be talking first about where to find funding, and then talking in more detail about pursuing funding, including addressing different obstacles. And my approach here is very much focusing on both demystifying this process as much as possible and also exercising shame. I think this is a process, of application and frankly, inevitable rejection that can feel really hard. And so I want to address that and work through that too. I think that's maybe a really crucial part here. So that's the sort of framework I'm bringing to this. So I want to talk first about where to find funding. And I I am an American citizen working mainly in the US, so that's been my perspective, but I can also speak more specifically this international opportunities too. So for example, the American Association of University Women's Fellowships, they have one that is specifically the International Fellowship, which has the same deadline of November 15th. That is for non-American people who are not citizens of the US. So there are opportunities out there. So I'm focusing first on the major non-residential fellowships. So fellowship meaning generally a larger pot of money that's supposed to support you in lieu of a salary for a year. And this can really range. So for example, I think some of the big fellowships like the ACLS or the NEH, the National Endowment for the Humanities, are about $60,000 a year. I believe the American Association of University Women is a bit less than that. You can find some that are a bit more too. So I'm just going to call out a couple here. Again, these are sort of the major ones. I can make these slides available to you, and also I'll give you some more resources for finding more information about this. But I've kind of put these in order of deadlines that are coming up. So if you work, for example, at a historically Black college or university, the ACLS HBCU faculty fellowship and grant application is coming up really soon. But there's further ones down the line, including the sort of next round of ACLS general fellowships, which will be sometime late September in 2025. The application deadline will be due. These are all available to independent and contingent scholars. The NEH summer stipend, actually, in some ways, you have a better chance of getting as an independent or contingent scholar in some respects now, because if you're on the tenure track, you have to be nominated by your institution if you have one. Or sorry, if you by your institution on the tenure track. But if you're off the tenure track or independent, you can just apply. And so your chances are a bit better, and they've just upped the amount of those summer stipends, which are now $8,000 for the summer instead of $6,000. So that's a good one to sort of get on your calendar. And then the NEH Public Scholars Program is a newish program, and most of its awardees are about half, a little over half, I think, are contingent or independent scholars. And this is geared towards folks who are writing a book project that is going to be published ideally with a trade press. And so the requirement there is you have to have published a book, either an academic book or a non-academic book, or have published 3 articles, essays with a more public-facing audience. And that can be on sort of non-peer-reviewed websites that academics often publish on, like the history website, Nursing Clio, for example. So I just would sort of highlight those. And as I mentioned to my colleagues before, while y'all were in the waiting room, one of the pieces of external research I did for this was talking to some program officers at the NEH and ACLS. And so the program officers who oversee these grants and fellowships really emphasized to me how much they are thinking about supporting independent and contingent scholars. One of them said to me specifically, like, we understand that most people in the academy are not scholars working on the tenure track anymore. And so these are our colleagues, and they're thinking about how to support humanistic inquiry by independent and contingent scholars. So these are our allies. So I just want to emphasize that too, because I think sometimes we can feel a little like, oh, can I hack it? And the emphasis from the program officers is yes. You are extremely competitive. The program officer from the ACLS said in the last few years, in particular, independent and contingent scholars have been absolutely as competitive as scholars on the tenure track who are usually applying with more resources, and they sort of know this. Okay, there's also the residential fellowships, which can be a little harder for folks who are less able to move. These are a lot of different like societies of fellows at different universities, Cornell societies of fellows, et cetera, some at Dartmouth. Some of these will have themes, and that's sort of something to look at to see if it's a good fit for you. In addition, since the pandemic, some of these residential fellowships have embraced a more hybrid model. So for example, the sort of annual fellowship at the Folger Library, you can now take like 3 of your 9 months on fellowship, not in residence. So they're not purely, yes, Kate, you're on mute.
Oh, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mimi, but we're only seeing half of each of your slides.
Oh, you're kidding. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for letting me know. Is that better?
Yes. Oh, that's much
Oh
better.
my God,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. All right, you didn't miss too much so far. Just sort of like the deadlines, and we'll make these available.
Yes,
Uh,
and we'll share the slides. Yeah, thank
Thanks so
you,
much.
Sarah.
And this link here, Boston University just happens to have a very good public-facing list of grants and fellowships for humanities scholars. So frankly, that's where I always start when I need like a master list. The program officers I spoke to said that the NEH and ACLS and their similar organizations are in conversation about trying to create a database for us to use to like better search, but it doesn't exist yet. They said look out for it within a year or so. And in the meantime, we've kept Boston University and the general interwebs. But I would say this is a great place to start. Some of it's a little out of date, so just double check some of those deadlines, but they all have links you can cut through. Also, if you are at an institution, even if you're contingent, do have a look at internal grants. I know at VCU, when I was off the tenure track, I was able to apply for and win funding internal to my university. There was no stricture on who could apply, even though I was on a 100% teaching contract, they still gave me research money when I applied for it. So know that that can be a possibility. I think at most places, it's frankly a possibility. So keep an eye out for those internal grant announcements. Some places to look would be like the website of the Dean of Research, or get on the Dean of Research's mailing list if you are at a larger university. Also, a lot of larger universities have either things called offices of internal funding. And those will usually will have a site that will list the grant opportunities available. And they might be university level, college level, or even your department through some donors and things might have some grants you can apply for. My biggest message on pursuing funding is keep applying. Keep applying. So this is a mix of my own experience and talking to these program officers again. So some of the anecdotes I got from the NEH program officer was, oh yeah, we've had folks be successful in their applications with us for fellowships in their 11th and 12th years, which blew even me away. The ACLS guy was like, oh, maybe we're in their 3rd or 4th year. And I got to tell you, it took me 5 years in a row to get anything from the ACLS. So this is my personal history of applying to the ACLS. I got my PhD in 2016. So about 2 years after, I was like, okay, I can write a grant fellowship or a fellowship application. And I finally did get a project development grant in 2022, which is specifically for folks who were in like high intensity teaching positions. I had been teaching a 4-4. And so if you make it to the final round, but you just happen not to get the fellowship vote, they found money to give me I think it was a $5,000 grant. And importantly, I also had access to the scholarly societies in the same way a full fellow would. So I was able to reach out to my local university that I happen to live near and be like, hey, do you have room at your humanities center to host me as an ACLS awardee, even if I'm not a fellow? And they said yes. So I, with $5,000, also got an office space and a cohort of other fellows who happened to be in residence there. So definitely take that opportunity seriously. If you even win like a grant rather than a fellowship kind of low, like smaller scale thing, you still have access, in the case of the ACLS and other ones, to some of the privileges and like resources. And then similarly, showing my work, I've applied for the NEH summer stipend a bunch. And I wanted to show you this one too, because the NEH summer stipend peer reviews will give you like little ratings. So you can kind of see like you can get a range of ratings. Like my 2nd year applying, I got 3 committee members who said, your project is very good. Your project is excellent. And 1 committee member who was, your project is non-competitive, which is the lowest possible rating. And when I was asking the program officer about this, they're like, yeah, we know sometimes we get a peer reviewer who's just a grouch, but we never hold anything back. So we're going to send it on to you. We're not going to alter it in any way except to anonymize it. But just like we know there are grouches, you should know there are grouches, you should keep applying. And they stress too that not everyone asks for the feedback. And one of the really valuable things about applying for these grants is you get high quality peer review feedback from experts in your field that can be really useful in not just reapplying for these grants, but sharpening your project in other ways. Obviously, it's really hard to apply and keep applying and reapply. Just logistically, we're all overworked. My way of doing it, and like, yeah, I skipped a year, 2022, did not make it. But I got back in the saddle. So, accept that there'll be bumps. Also, I would say that just apply to the first one you can manage, even if it's not great. But then you have materials, right? Then you don't have a blank page, and then you just keep tweaking them. A lot of these application packets are really, really similar. Like the NEH 5-page narrative or a 3-page narrative single space is basically the same word count as the ACLS 5-page double spaced. So as soon as you write one, you've kind of got the materials for the next one. And then you also have the material for your book proposal or for the back cover of your book, like whatever it is, it's all the same kind of stuff. So you're going to have to write it anyway. You might as well use it to also apply for grants. So hey, these are the ones that are coming up at the bottom of my slide. Maybe circle one of those dates and just like decide to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, these are kind of the like from my own experience, my colleagues' experience, from what the program officer said, why applying for grants, even aside from getting the money, can be really valuable. Just the act of sharpening your argument for like a 100-word abstract for a 3-page narrative, getting the peer review feedback. One thing one of the program officers emphasized too was when you put your work out there in a grant proposal for peer review, you're getting your future readers of your book or whatever are reading your stuff now and getting to know your ideas. You're publicizing your ideas in a meaningful way to the right kind of people. And I think that can be scary, but I think for the most part, it's a really good thing. It's kind of a way to network without going to a conference. And I kind of raised the question of like, oh, do people ever like worry about like someone stealing their ideas? And both program officers said, we have never seen that happen. And there's just like, first of all peer reviewers sign a particular like code of confidentiality and code of conduct as well. So I think there's a nice balance here between what's in it for you in getting peer review consideration. Reference letters can be a real block for some of us. So some of these bodies have jettisoned them. The ACLS doesn't require them anymore. So know that, like, you don't even need to get your letters, just send them your narrative. My biggest takeaway on reference letters is if you are 3 or 4 years past your dissertation defense, apparently peer reviewers want to see someone who is not your advisor. So that's about the time you want to be thinking about moving on from your dissertation to advisor, according to peer reviewers on places like the ACLS and the NEH. I would say I've had the most success with letters from sort of like people who are slightly senior to me, who have maybe know my work a little better, and frankly probably have more time to write letters than more senior people. And indeed, one of the program officers said to me, better to have a reference letter from someone who knows your work well and is friendly towards it than some senior muckety muck. So someone you're friendly with from a conference, you might write them and be like, hey, I know you really like this paper. I'm applying to this thing. Can I give you a quick synopsis of my work? And if you're, think that you could write me a letter, would you do it by this date? Would be one way to ask that. Yeah, the program officers sort of emphasize like the managing up of your letter writers, like here is a nice summary of my project. And some of the ways I think my work connects to our shared field or your work to help them in writing that letter, like what the kind of stuff you want them to say. So again, de-shaming a little bit. I've also had more luck in asking my near peer colleagues to write me letters. They've all said yes. When I asked some more senior mentors, even ones I had quite good relationships with, one ghosted me. That happens. I survived. I don't think my project's not good because of that. Like these things happen. I had 2 who said no at certain times. People I have very good relationships with. One of my dissertation advisor, I will tell you, was like, I can't write for you for that one. I'm writing for someone else already. And like, I can only write for one person a year for that one. And I was like, okay, sometimes you're just going to hear a no. And so I just wanted to put that out there. Like, you hear no, you survive, you ask the next person. Don't let that be shameful. Don't let it stop you, even if it feels bad. I've been there. It does not feel great, but It's possible to move on. In terms of sample documents for your funding, it's really helpful to look at a sample. The NEH provides them. The ACLS is working on providing them. Go to their websites. There's places like the MLA Academic Job Support Network. There people have generously posted samples for things they've applied to. Other professional organizations might do similar work. If you want to talk to me about the ACLS that I was successful in, email me at my website, or sorry, at my email, and I'll send you my sample, my successful one. Just ask people, like people, usually it's kind of flattering. So just ask around, and they're really helpful, I think, to look at. You kind of already talked about this, I think, in a previous event about writing groups, but obviously this is finding support, and I don't want to go over time. So the one other thing I'll point out here is if you're at a larger institution, again, you might have these administrative offices of sponsored programs or external funding where they actually have somebody who is on staff in order to sort of like read and provide feedback on grants. It's often for like the scientists in your university, but it can be really helpful just to have a non-expert smart person read your grants. And I did that when I was contingent at VCU. I just like made an appointment with the grant person, and we had some really helpful conversations, and it gave me some nice soft deadlines too. So I highly recommend that. Like, these administrators are getting paid so much, like use it, like, make them work. So yeah, I would say use your institution if you have one too. It can just be really helpful. Finally, the program officers. I was so scared to finally talk to a program officer, but I did it for this to do a little more research, and they were super friendly. They emphasized just like, we're your colleagues. We want to give you our money. Reach out to us. The ACLS is now doing these small group office hours that they're advertising on their website. The NEH has such a large staff that like you could have a one-on-one conversation about your project with a program officer. You can set up a meeting at this email. So you might as well do it when they're not too busy. So NEH, they're not, yeah, you've got a little bit of time for some of these. So if you're thinking about it, you can reach out now. And then finally, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is more generalized grant writing advice, but the number one takeaway is know your funder, know what their motive is. Don't be shy about parroting their terminology, their order of ideas, because they read so many of these. They want that quick key to like, okay, do they address this? Do they address this? Do they address this? It doesn't have to be a work of art. It just needs to follow their formula. And it is a work of creative nonfiction. So even if you're not sure you can do all the things you're going to say that you can do, just like say, I will. And like, look, it took that person 12 times to get an NEH for the same project. Obviously, they didn't do all the things they said they were going to do in all those 12 years, but they still got the award. And it was the same for me with the ACLS, right? Like, I finally got it in my 5th year grant. And I had been promising to do the same thing for 4 years, but you can't always do it all. So that was fast, but it's a lot of information. I'm really happy to talk more in the Q&A, and I will leave you with my most important motto. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Mimi. That was very inspiring. I'm excited to go apply for grants.
Awesome. That is what I'm hoping.
I will introduce our next speaker now, who is Ruth McAdams. Ruth McAdams is a senior teaching professor in the English department at Skidmore College, and she is the author of Temporality and Progress in Victorian Literature, published by the Edinburgh University Press in 2024, as well as articles that have appeared or are forthcoming in various journals in the field of Victorian studies. She's one of the organizers of Skidmore Faculty Forward and the Skidmore College NTT Faculty Union, SEIU Local 200 United, established in September 2022. Since then, she has served on the negotiating committee, and as of this press time, they are still negotiating their first collective bargaining agreement. So looking forward to hearing from you, Ruth.
Thank you, Kate, and thanks for the invitation. Can you see my whole slide? Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to discuss my experiences as one of the organizers of the successful campaign to unionize the non-tenure track faculty at Skidmore, a small liberal arts college in upstate New York. I hope this presentation will provide inspiration and useful information for faculty on other campuses to use collective action and organizing to improve working conditions. Oops. Next slide. Here we go. This presentation is adapted from an earlier version co-written with two of my fellow organizers, Pete Murray and Eileen Sperry. Here's the thesis statement. We unionized, and you should too. You will be better off with a union than without one, notwithstanding the value, sometimes the necessity of other approaches to reform. Unions provide the strongest, most legally binding framework for ensuring fair treatment of rank and file contingent faculty. The process of forming a union is daunting, and there are legal hurdles, particularly in some US states. If you live in one of those states and can't form a legal union with collective bargaining rights, my heart goes out to you. You can still achieve meaningful improvements to working conditions of faculty through other forms of collective action and solidarity. But if you live in a state with decent labor laws, you should absolutely unionize immediately. I'll start the presentation with some context on our institution and effort, and then give a narrative overview of the process, and finally discuss some tips and strategies for responding to the challenges of any organizing effort. Skidmore College employs roughly 400 faculty, about half tenure line, half NTT. The college ostensibly runs on a shared governance model, though over the last decades, faculty decision-making has been constrained within ever narrower bounds. Skidmore's problematic labor practices around NTT faculty are textbook typical and can be outlined very quickly. Three main issues inspired us to organize. Number one, precarity. The college was using short-term staffing to fill long-term needs. Number two, pay. It was low, inequitable, and opaque. And number three, no voice on campus. NTT faculty had no way to advocate for ourselves or our students. So over many years, repeatedly, Skidmore's NTT faculty raised these issues with the administration through all the approved channels, but got nowhere. In March 2018, two fed-up colleagues reached out to an organizer from SEIU, that is the Service Employees International Union, which represents contingent faculty at other small liberal arts colleges in the area. With SEIU's guidance, we started meeting one-on-one with NTT colleagues, seeking their support for unionization, which they indicated by signing a union authorization card. This is what it looks like, and we also had an online signature option. The goal was to go public with the campaign once a strong majority of NTT faculty had signed. Within the first year, we had signatures from about 25% of NTT faculty. Then things stalled for obvious and understandable reasons. The high turnover of NTT faculty, the burnout of the organizers, the difficulty of reaching people who are rarely on campus, and then COVID. This was a dark time. By January 2022, I had reached a breaking point. I felt that we couldn't continue limping along. A few of us got together and resolved that either the union needed to happen during that calendar year, or we needed to face that it never would. And I could just barely stand even thinking about that. So that's when I got really intense as an organizer, emailing strangers in other departments, waiting outside their classrooms to approach them in a friendly and non-threatening manner, setting goals and holding myself accountable, and as well as my fellow organizers. This was an enormous amount of work, and it was exhausting. But because we could see the support growing, it was also incredibly energizing. So in mid-April 2022, we had reached our goal. 65% of NTT faculty had signed cards. In consultation with SEIU, we publicly announced our intent to unionize and filed for our election with the National Labor Relations Board. We had to continue organizing over the summer as faculty came and went, and the administration attempted to prevent our unionization through spurious legal challenges and a standard by-the-book anti-union union busting campaign. Because we had gone public, the organizing work transitioned from one-on-one conversations to public forums. This period was marked by what felt like a lot of vocal opposition from a small minority, shouting, reply all recrimination. We were told that we were going to ruin other faculty's entire careers, livelihoods, futures. After much discussion, we resolved not to feed the trolls. The committee worked together to remain consistently positive in our messaging. On September 27th, 2022, after a very, very long summer, we voted in favor of unionization. Hooray, hooray. Having relived this emotional roller coaster for you, I'd like to identify some of the lessons that others might take from this experience. And I have 5 big tips to give that arise directly from mistakes that I personally made in this process. Tip number 1 is that you and others need to go all in to make it happen. Early on, I took an attitude toward organizing that was too casual. I thought that it would suffice to talk with friends about unionizing when the subject organically came up. That wasn't enough, and at a certain point, it became counterproductive because I was spinning my wheels and getting nowhere. Unfortunately, it temporarily requires an uncomfortable level of intensity and commitment from a core group of organizers. Number 2 is that one-on-one organizing conversations are not arguments to win. They are processes of mutual trust building and extending empathy over and over before you ever get that empathy back. I don't think I ever convinced anyone of anything. I think I just eventually learned how to communicate my good intentions through listening. Tip number 3 is to understand the paradoxical role of fear. My sense is that almost all the resistance that we encountered was ultimately rooted in fear rather than true ideological opposition. People assumed that so long as they didn't rock the boat, they would stay safe. But in reality, the vessel is not seaworthy. The captain doesn't know what he's doing and does not care about your life. You are going through the kind of tropical storm that is becoming more frequent and severe due to climate change. So on the one hand, you're saying to your colleagues, be brave, grab an oar. Being openly pro-union is ironically protective in many environments, including this one. But on the other hand, we're also saying, yes, the situation is terrifying. You are correct to be terrified. You are already in mortal danger. So tip number 4 is to be patient but insistent. I underestimated people's identification with and faith in the existing system, even when they recognize that it is exploiting them. While you are secretly organizing a union, you need to also publicly demand that the institution reform itself voluntarily, which, if they did it, might obviate the need for your union. When they don't do it, you are in a better position to try to pierce people's thick Marxist false consciousness. Point number 5. The organizing committee needs to be diverse, and I want to emphasize in particular age and academic discipline. Older people are more anti-union, and the best person to draw them in is often another older person. Similarly, on many campuses, the scientists are less radical, even though they are totally exploited workers. You often need another scientist to help make the case. The organizing committee needs to build coalitions across difference through radical empathy. A final takeaway is how important and how difficult the emotional labor of this process is, especially the work of effective conflict management. It takes a real toll. The organizing committee needed to trust each other, to communicate, to work as a team, to avoid burnout. The upside is that when you put in the immense labor to build strong connections among your colleagues, the outcome is a culture of trust and transparency. So in conclusion, I'm worried that this presentation has not actually supported the thesis statement that you should unionize. It was a long road. And as Kate mentioned, although we unionized in September 2022, we are still negotiating our first contract. The work has continued and it will continue indefinitely, though not with the intensity and terror of the early phases. It was and is hard for me to accept that I have to make time for this work, time that I am not spending on my research, my teaching, my personal life. I do not want to do it. I do not want to be here, but it must be done. This presentation must be given. And it's been incredibly rewarding in ways that I did not anticipate when I undertook this work long ago. I want to stress that any level of solidarity and trust you can build among your colleagues will benefit you, your students, and your whole campus community. And this is the case even if you do not have the legal right to form a real union with collective bargaining rights. But again, if you can, you just should right away. Any step you can take towards solidarity across departments, ranks, generations, positions, or campuses is a step toward just labor conditions across academia. Thanks.
Wow, thank you very much, Ruth. That was really powerful and yeah, amazing. And thank you for doing that work. I think even though maybe it's benefiting your institution, like it's benefiting everyone that you've undertaken that. So, and thank you for sharing. That's really powerful. So thank you. And finally, we're going to hear from Eleanor Wakefield. So Eleanor Wakefield is a senior instructor in it's a senior instructor of English and composition at the University of Oregon. Eleanor's teaching and research interests include poetry and poetics, American literature, women's poetry, formal verse, and Pacific Northwest literature. Her PhD in American poetry is from the University of Oregon. In her role as VP of Non-Tenure Track Instructional Faculty Affairs for the University of Oregon's Faculty Union, United Academics of the University of Oregon, Eleanor helps pro tem and career faculty improve their working conditions. In this role, she has also worked with other academic unions and individuals interested in higher education union issues. Her other campus work includes directing the UO Composition Program's Writing Lab and serving on department, university, and state committees to improve the educational experiences of students in Oregon and at Oregon, and to improve working conditions for faculty. Eleanor's work has also appeared in the Hopkins Review and the Robert Frost Review. So looking forward to hearing from you, Eleanor.
Thanks so much, Kate. Can everybody see my slides? Awesome. Okay, so my situation is so lucky. When I joined the faculty at the University of Oregon, we were unionized. We are represented at the University of Oregon by a wall-to-wall faculty union. That is to say, tenure line faculty, pro tem faculty, we call adjuncts pro temps, pro tem faculty, postdocs, and what we call career faculty are together in one union. We are affiliated under AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, and the AAUP, the American Association of University Professors. So that's a little background on the U of O. So I didn't have to help us form a union, but I have been on the board for a long time. We have been a faculty union since 2012. We represent 1,734 faculty. We are a highly unionized workplace. Our grad employees have been unionized for over 40 years. We also have a staff union, and as of just this fall, our student workers are unionized. So that's a really exciting change. They actually may have voted in the spring. So they're bargaining just as we are at the same time right now. So we on our board have vice presidents for different faculty groups, and I am currently the representative for NTT faculty whose primary duties are instructional. We also have a VP for NTT research. And then of course we have a VP for tenure track issues. So that person deals with wildly different things than I do. Previously, when I was myself a pro tem, I was the chair of our representative assembly. And then also in that period, in the period that I've been active in the union, I have been the secretary and vice president of communications. So you can see I included just a little data about our particular union. This is from our website. We represent 627 tenure track faculty. And then you'll see that if you add up these other numbers, excluding librarians, their job category is different, we have much, much higher numbers of non-tenure line faculty than we do tenure line faculty at the University of Oregon now. In my own department, English, which I believed we had changed our name officially to English and composition, and I was wrong. I've just been calling us by the wrong name for the last couple of years. So in English, we recently, in the past 5 or so years, have really switched in power from primarily tenure line faculty on the English literature side to primarily career faculty on the composition side. And that has been a big cultural shift within our department. And that's common in other areas of campus as well. So this is a great place to jump in with Ruth's presentation. In the time that I have been a member of this faculty union, that I have been faculty at the University of Oregon, many pro tem lines have been converted to career track lines. That is to say, you're no longer on a term-to-term contract. That's been at least 10 lines have been converted in my time. The promotion and review process has been overhauled to better demonstrate respect for career faculty work. Our contracts have gone from annual to continuous. People at my rank have a full academic year of layoff notice. And there are rules about when layoffs are permissible, and it can be grieved if a department says they're going to do layoffs of career faculty. Our salary floor has increased. I looked up these numbers. When I was hired, the career faculty salary floor was $39,000 a year. And now the floor for new faculty who are hired into our program is $52,000 a year, which, as you can imagine, makes just an enormous difference in our ability to hire people and that people look at this as a job they would stay in. I got a 16% equity raise after an external equity study. Family leave has improved. Departments have to have language about and a procedure for considering caregiving duties when assigning class schedules, and a lot more. So some of these are really specific to career faculty or non-tenure line faculty, and some are more general, but they affect, of course, career faculty. So I want to mostly speak about ways people who do have an existing union can work together to increase contingent faculty power, but I have a couple of examples about ways that you can apply these same principles even if your faculty are not unionized. So this is the kind of overview. These are the four main things I'm going to hit. To advocate for power for contingent faculty, your union should prioritize contingent faculty issues. Your union should have other faculty groups, tenure line faculty, speak to these issues at the table and in meetings. You should build affinity groups or caucuses to hear from more contingent faculty, and this will sometimes involve work. They're not on campus as often. They're not paid sometimes for being around. And then you should create space for contingent faculty in leadership. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are four major ways that we can work to get the contingent faculty voice heard better. So prioritizing contingent faculty issues within your union leadership can look a few different ways. One is everyone in union leadership should treat contingent faculty issues as important. Everyone, including your tenure line faculty, should be informed about why these issues matter. So there's an educational piece here. When you present things like bargaining platforms, when you communicate about contract wins, when you communicate about the benefits of the union in general, you should do it not only highlighting the things that affect tenure line faculty. You should make sure that there's a mix and it doesn't feel ranked, right? So some possible topics that might be considered would be things like, are full-time instructional non-tenure line faculty given representation in shared governance? Is that an issue that your union would want to tackle? And that's something tenure line faculty can speak to. They can say, this would matter, this would help. This would help our students. And then are opportunities or obligations to do service reflected in workloads for career faculty? So at the University of Oregon, pro tem faculty are not expected to do service, but that also means there's a benefit. You know, they shouldn't necessarily have to do extra work, but that also means their voices aren't heard in shared governance and in department meetings, and we're not getting their perspective to improve the student experience. Are NTT faculty on annual contracts, or is there an expectation of continued employment? Are there ways to improve the contract piece or the way that their employment functions on paper? And are there protections against permanent adjunctification? So for example, as I said, we converted a lot of adjunct lines to what we call career lines. And we have now a provision in our collective bargaining agreement that says, if a department has had the same adjunct line for 3 years, that can't be an adjunct line anymore. That's a permanent position, and they have to convert that line. And departments will argue, and they're allowed to make a case, but this has really improved opportunities for people who want this to be their career. So those are just a few examples. I'm trying to show in this example, this is a screenshot of our current bargaining platform, the sort of poster version. And I tried to highlight, I didn't have a ruler, it's not the most beautiful highlighting in the world, where there are issues that are specific to career faculty or especially affect career faculty. So you can see that it's not a bullet point, career issues. It's woven throughout that these are things that affect the whole faculty and the whole campus. So the way we present our issues, we try really hard to have tenure line faculty, everybody know and be able to speak to these at the table and in organizing conversations. So if you want, and you can certainly always look at our website too, but you can see some of these things that we're bargaining for. And if your campus union is looking for ideas, we are always happy to talk to other unions and share ideas. So speaking across faculty type, which I've also already mentioned, it's really powerful and important to have people speak about the benefits that other groups on campus provide for the campus as a whole and for the faculty as a whole. So we want to make sure that everybody at the table when we're bargaining is comfortable speaking to the issues that will benefit contingent faculty. So we will often have a tenure line faculty member explain an issue, even if it's an issue that primarily affects contingent faculty. In other kinds of meetings, we try to make sure that we haven't siloed these issues. We wouldn't say, everybody who wants to talk about career issues, go to that table. Everybody who wants to talk about tenure line issues, go to that table. We try to find a shared priority that many of these issues are everybody's issues. The short contracts and adjunctification are bad for tenure line faculty, just the same way they're bad for our students and everybody else. We want everybody to know enough to be able to speak to these things and to understand why it matters. So we educate everyone. We want to be thoughtful about also putting it in terms that appeal to and are persuasive to other members of campus. So we try to think about what's the university's mission and how does that speak to this? And what is our commitment to our students and how do these things speak to those? Our faculty working conditions are our student learning conditions. So we often think rhetorically, as I said, I teach mostly composition. So we think rhetorically about how we can pitch this, right? And when you send faculty out organizing, you don't always want to match people with their own job category. Sometimes, of course, it is great to have somebody speak to somebody who can talk about their exact situation. But other times it's really helpful to know that people are able and willing to speak across rank and category. So I just went out, we did a big organizing blitz last week, and I was paired with an older male tenure line faculty member to go talk to the widest variety of people. And it's great. We can address different issues and different things we see in the same conversation with a member. And then I have this example for this bullet point that's actually outside of the union. But this same point about having people advocate for career or pro tem faculty issues can also just work with internal department organizing to push for what you want to happen in your department. I know it's not best practice to just read from a slide, but I'm going to do it. Several years ago, the English department at the University of Oregon worked together across rank and job type to present a request to the college for lower course caps in 100 level comp classes. It was important for career faculty, pro tem faculty, and graduate employees. Those are the people who primarily teach 100 level composition at the U of O, so that we could do our jobs better. But it was also meaningful departmentally that students had a better learning experience and might feel more likely to continue in English courses. Strategically, the faculty in our department focused on educating all faculty, especially tenure line faculty, on the rationale for the proposal, driving turnout at meetings, and planning the presentation. We presented our arguments to the college, such that faculty in all job types spoke to how the issue mattered. And this included our department head. He gave part of the argument to the college. Rhetorically, we drew on the university's mission and strategic plan, and we also spoke to the benefit to students. As a department, we spoke of we and our needs and our goals instead of differentiating career and pro tem faculty from their tenure line colleagues. And as I said, in our department, the tenure line people very, very rarely teach a 100 level comp class. And this was a really successful outside of the union organizing campaign. We were able to use data and use our shared voice to get the college to make a change. That change was short-lived. This is not as effective as doing it within a union, because there's not a contract that binds the college to keep that course cap in place. But it was a really meaningful experience that helped, I think, in addition to this specific issue of course caps, it helped faculty feel united. So I'm going to speed up just a little bit. Build groups for contingent faculty, so within your union or within your department. Make sure you have a way to hear people's voices. We have caucuses, and sometimes we have meetings or listening sessions that are particularly applicable to them. And we try to keep track of patterns of concern that are raised in other places so that the bargaining team can reconsider those in the future. So as an example, we currently have a career and pro tem instructional faculty caucus. I'm sort of the boss of that one right now. And it might make more sense for us to split those. We do other things for postdocs. The NTT research person mostly runs the postdoc programs. We want to make sure that leadership is a pathway within the union for career faculty. Ideally, you don't want a board of your union to only represent one job type. That makes it harder to activate people of other job types. So that might just mean opportunities. It might mean better outreach. Sometimes it even means a quota, like your board needs X number of people from each job category. That can be really hard, but you would have to kind of assess how big is our problem in our union of representation and participation. To advocate for more leadership opportunities, I have a list of ideas, including learning who is in power, learn how the union supports union work. We get course releases to do our union work, and that, of course, helps get people feel willing to put in all this time and effort. If you can, participate in the ways that are already available as you advocate for bigger change. Maybe propose an idea. And there are also some opportunities through some unions like AFT for external funding, like AFT funding, to do more union projects. So we were able to pay one of our pro tem faculty members to do some organizing training. And then he stepped up and organized this pro tem caucus that now I've kind of absorbed. So there are some opportunities for people who want to change their union internally to get some support and help for that too. Basically, this is my sort of sum up of all of this. Contingent faculty have to be seen as part of the mission of your union and of your institution. If the union and if your institution don't think of them that way, it's a lot harder to advocate for their needs and to present their needs as essential to student and faculty success. If these things don't seem visible, there are some opportunities to continue working toward it. So that can be rhetorical, it can be in relationship building. There are some other possibilities too. And I'd be happy to brainstorm with people. Learning more can help you do better advocacy work for yourself and for your colleagues. So finding out how your union is organized, how similar faculty unions work, do they have the same kind of power? Do they have an example that's a positive or negative model that you might want to work towards or away from? So these are things, I mean, we're all academics, so learning more helps us have more thoughts about possible pathways for ourselves. And these were a couple of my final thoughts. Most unions would love excited leaders. If you want to be in leadership, it is very likely that there is a place for you. So if any of this appeals and your faculty or your institution does have a union, just ask, what can I do? Is there a committee I can join? If your faculty are unionized and contingent faculty are not a part of it, so the tenure line faculty only are a union, there are ways to make progress on that. And that can include making a separate union or working with the existing union to change its charter. So who is included in those boundaries? Both of those are a big push, but they can be super worth it. As I said in my early slide, our union has really changed my job from feeling contingent to feeling like a career. And also, if you have leadership who seems pretty entrenched and isn't interested in this stuff, there are ways to organize outside of that to make a change in your leadership too. Mostly these have to be elected positions, and there's a way to fix some of that too. And then, as I said, this doesn't all have to be done within a union. You can also find other avenues on campus, like the example of my department working together to change course caps. So I took all our time, but that was what I had about working within your union for career faculty. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Eleanor. That was wonderful and really, yeah, all of these presentations today have been super interesting and inspiring. So I don't, if there are any questions from the audience, we can take maybe one question, I suppose. Some folks have to run because it's, yeah, we are at time. So if you have to go, that's fine. But if we do all have maybe time for one question, if there is one. No. So I guess I just to round it off, if you could just like say maybe like one thing, because these were very different presentations, but really interesting ones and very inspiring as well. I think just to hear like all the work that you're all doing. But we're facing this moment when contingency, as you pointed out, Eleanor, it's the norm now in most institutions. And so I'm just kind of curious if there are specific challenges for humanities scholars that you all notice. Then I think unionization for contingent scholars is certainly like important, but I'm just curious about if there's certain things that you would say humanities scholars, you should apply for this or attend to this as you're thinking about improving contingency.
I'll start. I actually don't think that things are better outside the humanities. I think that we're always told that like the scientists are swimming in money, but they're not necessarily. Things are bad there too. And I think it's helpful to try to build coalitions with those people. I guess I just want to say another thing is to stop viewing your NTT colleagues as your competitors for limited resources, because you are all being pit against each other while the boss runs away with the cash. So view each other as allies rather than competitors.
And on looking for internal funding from your universities, as a humanities scholar, I actually, like our dean of research said that the College of Humanities tends to be underapplied for their humanities scholarships as opposed to sciences. So there's like opportunities waiting at many institutions, it sounds like, for folks like us to take more advantage of what's out there. And similarly, to keep applying. The dean of research at my college or my university said, we're always so surprised when we get a promising application that we didn't fund the first round, that we never hear from that person again. We expect to hear from them again. Like, it's not a shame to get a rejection. It's just like part of the process. So like, we expect you'll apply, and then you'll apply again. And then like, we'll find you on that third or fourth time or whatever it is. So just know that the rejection is part of the process.
Yeah, I actually think internal to unions, humanities faculty and like in our case, College of Arts and Sciences faculty can be almost overrepresented. Many of us are studying things like labor and justice, and so we tend to be a more vocal group. So in terms of like building coalitions and having a diverse leadership team, there's work to be done to engage people who are not from those departments and those programs. We have really good representation from the departments that are most career faculty dominant. So that makes sense labor-wise. And it can be hard sometimes to get tenure line faculty, especially, to want to think of themselves as labor. So there are some like rhetorical issues that come up. But it's good for everybody. And you can often appeal to humanities faculty with this language of justice and the work that they already do with equity and inclusion and labor work. So those are the things I would say humanities specifically.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic evening, and yeah, thank you all to the attendees for coming. And yeah, we will put this recording on the ASLE website. And if it's all right, also share your resources, because you've got an incredible wealth of resources. So thank you again, and yeah, have a great evening.